Okay, but let's shift from social media over here to the political sphere. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. This article is from Common Dreams, which is it's like a super like progressive site. So it's pretty interesting that they're sort of calling out this whole the Russian bot narrative that was so prominent because a lot of right wingers of the time thought they're like, oh, this is like a left wing thing that they're pushing this idea that Russian bots are the only reason that Trump won in 2016. But it's like, it wasn't really a left wing thing. It was a CNN thing because they're constantly, the mainstream media, as we know, they're constantly trying to push for more war with Russia and all this bullshit. Right. So whatever they could do to sort of heighten that fear mongering, just use that and say it's Putin's fault. It's Russian bots. Yep. It's like, it could have been American bots, could have been Chinese bots, could have been bots from Israel or Iran or wherever. But it's like, no, it's Russian bots.
Well, this is really where too, like the phrase like disinformation came from. Yeah. You're a bot. You're a bot. Everybody started calling each other bots.
That was a Sneeko thing. He's like, you're a bot. I'm like, all right.
But Sneeko's kind of a bot. I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
lie.
he's become a bit of a bot.
Yeah. What does this thing have to say? Did you have was it
Yeah. Oh, if the microphone will work. So, new study blows up myth that Russian bots swayed 2016 election for Trump. A study published Monday by researchers at New York University eviscerated liberal Democrats' assertion that the Russian government's disinformation campaign on Twitter during the 2016 presidential election had any meaningful impact on the contest's outcome. So the study, which was led by NYU's Center for Social Media and Politics and published in the scientific journal Nature Communications, is based on a survey of 1,500 U.S. respondents' Twitter activity. The researchers, who also include the scholars from blah, 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 have concluded that while the online push by Russian foreign influence accounts didn't change attitudes or voting behavior in the 2016 U.S. election, the disinformation campaign may have still had consequences. It's like everything has consequences, right?
I don't know. If you compare the numbers, right? So in the election, Joe Biden got like 80 million something votes?
Absolutely.
Right. And we can compare that to the number of 22 and then upwards to like 95 million bots on Twitter. And I'm like, okay, so that might literally just like outweigh every single voting person in the United States if you can just in mass push like a single opinion out and to like start to change people's minds. Right. Like, that's a crazy amount. It's like a bot for every single person that exists who can vote. Like,
well, and it's almost insulting where it's like, I mean, people are easily swayed, but it's just like the idea that no one can come to a conclusion themselves. It's just like, it's had to have been a bot that convinced you to vote this way or do this or whatever. And it's like, yeah, fucking coal miners in Pennsylvania are like on Twitter all day, right? Yeah, and it's like, they're that's what fucking took them over the edge. When it came to Trump versus Hillary Clinton, like, it's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from this is ever more like, don't even believe anything on the internet, even if it's a real person telling it to you, because chances are they fucking heard it from a bot, right? So I'm just like, if it doesn't pop up in your own life, then just try not to think about it too much.
Again, too, though, my whole like reason for including like this though is that it's like, dead internet theory. It's like, oh, the internet isn't made up of real people anymore, allegedly. But it's like, bro, literally like the most like prestigious news networks were saying this kind of shit as a scapegoat for losing an election, like that an election not going the way they wanted to. Their scapegoat was there's bots that are spreading disinformation, and it's a threat to our they were saying
it's
shit
a
like
threat
that.
To our democracy.
They're straight up saying
the threat to our democracy thing is, I think, a really good example of just human bots at work.
That one video, I feel like we probably played it before on the podcast, but I remember that video
with continuously doubling videos of these newscasters.
I could probably find that in a second,
talking about how fake news and all that. Yeah, you should pull it up.
I'll pull that up after this article real quick. But let me just. There's like a couple little nuggets in here. So according to the paper, exposure to Russian disinformation accounts was heavily concentrated. Only 1% of users accounted for 70% of exposures. Second, exposure was concentrated among viewers who strongly identified as Republicans. Third, exposure to the Russian influence campaign was eclipsed by content from domestic news media and politicians. Finally, we have no evidence of a meaningful relationship between exposure to the Russian foreign influence campaign and changes in attitudes, polarization, or voting behavior.
I love this. Basically, what they're saying is, it's not their fault, guys. The Russian bots made them do it.
Well, right, but I mean, this paper is saying the opposite. It's saying that they're already leaning that way. I don't think it pushed anyone really over the edge.
They're saying they're targeting the Republicans, right, with these bots.
Right.
So in a sense, it's condescending in a way. It's like, no, they weren't targeting us. They're just the Republicans, and that's So you can't like they didn't know any better,
And some of this stuff was real, like Russian troll farms or whatever, but that was real people making handcrafted artisanal memes. It was really more so than bots. It was memes that won the 2016 election.
It is.
That was a big factor.
Because that was the whole thing. Yeah, they pay like farmers, like fools in Czechoslovakia to just wreak havoc on the internet all day.
But those are real people.
Yeah, exactly. That is different. But it's also at the same time, it's like they're just mad they didn't think of it. You feel me? Because they really did. There was a whole thing where it's like Facebook and Twitter went to fucking Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They're like, do you guys want to do joint campaigns? We do all this shit. And then Hillary was like, no. And the Democrats were like, no. And then Trump and all them were like, yeah, let's run it. And it had a big impact, doing Facebook, algorithm ads and shit. And they're just pissed that they didn't think of it.
I think it's a brilliant tactic. Especially in a political or psychological warfare sense, because memes are kind of pure and in some sense nihilistic intrinsically. They're just supposed to be in this little bubble, right? You can enjoy them free of consequence, free of anybody saying anything. So when you tie that to a political movement, everybody just kind of doubles down on the fact that it's funny or it's trendy or something, rather than there actually being any real consequence tied to the notion. Right. It's just like a mental programming sort of technique.
We were just saying this too earlier. It's like the reason a song gets stuck in your head is because you only hear a snippet of it. You hear it for a half a second, and then you're like, damn, all day long you're like, do.
You're like, even flow.
Yeah. But
as Adam Neely would say, repetition legitimizes.
Yeah.
And I think that holds true here.
Yeah. Well, and then too, it's okay, let's say it's you're scrolling through your phone in between doing something else, and you see something, and you're like, and then you just go right back to whatever you're doing. It's that's gonna just linger in your head because it entered and left so fast. It's gonna go on loop, and in the way that a song gets stuck in your head. Because I've noticed that happen to me. I'll watch a reel or something when I'm at work, in between doing transactions and shit, and then I'm thinking about the reel as I'm doing other things, and it's that's how stuff gets stuck in your head.
It's been proven that if you start a task and finish it before it's incomplete, or you get distracted and you start doing something else,
you're gonna think about it all.
You're gonna be less efficient at doing the second task because it's your brain is still trying to process doing two things at once there. So
that's true. Yeah. It's like blue balls for ideas.
Exactly. But you're just constantly just on Instagram, you're just blue balls, blue balls, blue balls, blue balls.
Right.
The whole time.
Right.
You're just I'm so here for this. I'm enjoying the fuck out.
If anything, it's conditioning people to not be able to actually finish a thought or form an entire thought to yourself, which is why we were just talking about before the podcast. It's dude, we got to get off these reels, man. We make them.
We're contributing to the chaos.
I enjoy me some reels. There's some crazy ones.
There's some nuts reels though. Our reels are very fucking tame compared to some of the shit out there.
There's some dope creators though, but there's also people who just make pure nonsense.
But it will burn your brain. But I found the video you were talking about, the Sinclair video, which we've probably played before, but it's been a while. But this is an example of some real life bots. They're real people, but they're
doing the same function.
They're doing the bidding, yeah. And it's crazy because this is all from cable news, and cable news has to do this in the old-fashioned way. They don't have bots, but they're essentially airport news and gym news. That's where the most of their viewership is, because they're betting on you only being able to see that, you know, you're like on the treadmill or you're walking to a terminal or whatever, and you see like 30 seconds of the walls are closing in on Trump or whatever, or something like that. And it sticks with you like that, like a meme or like a song. It's like kind of an earworm sort of thing.
It's the psychology behind jargon specifically, and like double speak. Right. So if you guys want to look into that at some point, like that's
from
how
like 1984 or whatever.
Yeah, it's the same thing
like
where you're
Newspeak,
like either redefining the definitions of words, or you just use such like complicated or like meaningless phrases repetitiously such that they become associated with an idea, like, you know, like what you're just saying. It's just one of these catchphrases that they kept repeating to
Russian
people over
misinformation.
and over. Until you're like, what does that even mean? Russian misinformation.
Yeah, disinformation or whatever. Yeah. Which is what they were claiming the whole Hunter Biden laptop was for months. The New York Times and all these places were basically just asserting, they're like, this laptop's not even real, it's just disinformation. And then once Elon took over Twitter, they dug back into all these old emails from Twitter employees, finding that it's like, it was a real thing. And then like the FBI was like, hey, could you just censor that for